$85,000 for an SUV quieter than a Rolls-Royce. Not almost as quiet, quieter, measurably quieter, and it's from China. The automakers in the West are pretending it doesn't exist because if people actually knew about this thing, the luxury SUV game would be in serious trouble. This is the Hongqi Ls7, a full-size luxury SUV that costs a quarter of what a Rolls-Royce Cullinan does, but delivers presidential-level silence that would make Rolls-Royce engineers nervous. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is another Chinese knockoff with cheap tricks, let me stop you right there. Hongqi isn't some startup. This is China's official state car brand, the one that builds limousines for presidents and world leaders. So when they decided to make an SUV for the public, they brought presidential level engineering with them, and the result is something the luxury world wasn't ready for. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why Western brands are quietly panicking. And yeah, I'm going to prove that silence claim with actual decibel measurements. Let's dive in. Let's start with what you see before you even open the door. The Hongqi Ls7 doesn't whisper its presence, it announces it. This thing is massive, over 5¼ meters long. That's longer than a standard Range Rover and nearly as big as a Cadillac Escalade. But here's the difference. Where American SUVs scream power and German SUVs flex precision, the Ls7 radiates authority, like it was designed to pull up to state dinners, not soccer practice. Up front, you're immediately hit by the signature Hongqi waterfall grille. And I mean waterfall. Vertical chrome slats cascade down from the hood like liquid metal frozen in time. It's bold, it's unapologetic, and it's unmistakably Chinese luxury. No subtle minimalism here. This is old school elegance meeting modern presence. The headlights flanking the grille are slim, sharp, and stretch back into the fenders with LED signatures that glow like neon brushstrokes at night. And here's the detail that shows you this isn't a budget build. The chrome surrounding the grille isn't just chrome, it's polished to a mirror finish, so clean you could check your reflection in it. That's Rolls-Royce level attention to detail right there. Move to the side and the Ls7 shows you its true scale. The roofline stays upright and commanding. No coupe nonsense here. This is a proper 3-row SUV that doesn't apologize for taking up space. The door handles are chunky, chrome finished, and feel like they weigh ½ kilogram each. Solid, vault-like. The kind of tactile quality that makes you realize this isn't playing in the budget sandbox. The wheels are 22 inches, wrapped in low-profile rubber with multi-spoke designs that look like they belong on a Bentley Bentayga, and the stance is planted, wide, aggressive without trying too hard. Chrome strips run along the windows and down the sides, giving it that executive presence. You know, the kind of car that makes people in parking lots stop and stare, not because it's flashy, but because it just looks expensive. Swing around to the back and you'll find a full-width LED light bar stretching across the tailgate. At night, it glows like a crimson horizon line, tying the whole rear design together. Vertical tail lights on each end echo the front grille's waterfall theme, creating visual symmetry that's surprisingly sophisticated. The rear bumper is clean and integrated, and the dual exhaust tips on the V6 model are the only hint that there's real power under the hood. And here's something you don't see on many Chinese SUVs. The panel gaps are tight, like German car tight. The paint finish is flawless, deep, with a wet look gloss that rivals anything from Munich or Stuttgart. Hongqi didn't cut corners here because they couldn't afford to. This car represents China on the global stage. Park this next to a Range Rover, and the Range Rover suddenly looks understated. Park it next to a Cadillac Escalade, and the Escalade looks like it's trying too hard. The Ls7 sits in this perfect sweet spot of commanding without being cartoonish, and that's intentional, because this SUV was designed with one goal in mind: to prove that Chinese luxury isn't a contradiction, it's a statement. But the exterior is just the opening act. The real magic, the thing that justifies that Rolls-Royce comparison in the title, happens the moment you open the door and step inside. Close the door behind you, and the first thing you notice is the weight. It shuts with a bank vault thunk. Solid, insulated, like you just sealed yourself off from the outside world. And that's not an accident, that's engineering, because the Hongqi Ls7 isn't just built to look like a luxury SUV, it's built to feel like a sensory deprivation chamber on wheels. And I'll explain exactly how they did that in a minute. But first, let's talk about what you're looking at. The dashboard stretches wide in front of you, wrapped entirely in soft touch leather and real wood trim. Not the fake wood veneer you see in cheaper cars, actual polished wood with visible grain and a hand-finished feel. The steering wheel is thick, leather wrapped, and features touch-sensitive controls that respond to the lightest tap. In front of you sits it's a fully digital driver display, crisp and customizable, showing everything from speed to navigation to drive modes. To your right, a massive central touchscreen dominates the dash, running Hongqi's proprietary infotainment system. It's responsive, intuitive, and surprisingly well designed for a Chinese automaker. No lag, no clunky menus, just clean graphics and smooth transitions. And here's the surprise, there's a third screen in front of the passenger seat, so your co-pilot can control music, browse the web, or watch movies without bothering you. That's a feature you'd expect in a Mercedes S-Class, not an $85,000 Chinese SUV. But let's talk about the materials for a second, because this is where the LS7 separates itself from pretenders. The seats are wrapped in Napa leather with quilted diamond stitching that feels buttery soft to the touch. The kind of leather that breathes, ages beautifully, and costs a fortune per square meter. The stitching is precise, symmetrical, and runs across the seats, door panels, and even the dashboard. Every surface you touch feels premium. The center console features a crystal-like gear selector that looks like it was carved from glass. Ambient lighting runs along the doors, dash, and footwells, and you can customize the colors to match your mood. Want a calming blue for a long drive? Done. Want an energetic red for a night out? Easy. The attention to detail is genuinely obsessive. And then there's the sound system, or should I say the absence of sound, because this is where the Hongqi Ls7 does something genuinely remarkable. The cabin is equipped with a 23-speaker audio system tuned specifically for this SUV's acoustic profile. But here's the thing, the real flex isn't the speakers, it's the silence that surrounds them. Let me explain how they achieved this. The Ls7 uses triple-layer acoustic glass on every window. That's 3 sheets of glass laminated together with noise-damping material sandwiched in between. The result is a barrier that blocks wind noise, road noise, and even high-frequency sounds that normally sneak through. But Hongqi didn't stop there. They added active noise cancellation technology, the same kind you'd find in high-end headphones, built directly into the cabin. Microphones monitor ambient noise in real time, and the system generates inverse sound waves to cancel it out. So engine hum, tire roar, even the whoosh of air at highway speeds, all of it gets neutralized before it reaches your ears. And then there's the insulation, the floor, the roof, the doors, all of it packed with multi-layer soundproofing materials originally developed for Hongqi's state limousines, the ones that carry world leaders. This isn't consumer-grade stuff, this is presidential-grade isolation, and the result is a cabin so quiet that at highway cruising speeds, you can literally hear your own breathing. I'm not exaggerating. Independent tests measured the LS7's cabin noise at 62 decibels at 120 kilometers per hour. For context, a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, the car that's supposed to be the quietest SUV on the planet, registers around 65 decibels under the same conditions. The Hongqi is quieter, by a measurable margin, for a quarter of the price. Let that sink in for a moment. Sit in the front and you're surrounded by luxury, but slide into the second row and you'll understand why this SUV exists. Because the rear seats are where the LS7 truly flexes. The second row features 2 individual captain's chairs separated by a wide center console. These aren't just seats, they're executive loungers. Each one reclines, ventilates, heats, and massages. And I don't mean that gimmicky massage function that just vibrates awkwardly. This is a multi-program massage system with rollers that actually knead your back and shoulders. There's a leg rest that extends out, so you can stretch out like you're in business class at 35,000 feet. The side bolsters are deep and supportive, holding you gently but firmly. And each seat has its own touchscreen controller mounted in the armrest, so you can adjust temperature, seat position, and even window tint without asking the driver. The third row is there if you need it. 3 seats across, enough for kids or smaller adults. But let's be honest, if you're buying an LS7, you're not using the third row often. You're using the second row like a mobile boardroom. And with the more audacious. Silence. And that brings us back to the claim that started this whole video. Is the Hongqi Ls7 really quieter than a Royce sound deadening material and testing prototypes in anechoic chambers? The Cullinan's cabin registers around 65 decibels.